All right, everyone, welcome to this episode of the Greer Method podcast. I'm excited today because you're probably thinking, why on a Friday are we doing an interview? Because normally they're earlier in the week, but this kind of just came together. I'm super excited for you because I always like to work with and talk with an athlete. And the guest that I have today is one of the best athletes that I've ever met. Been fortunate enough, and he's a really great guy as well. So let me just give you a little bit of background from what I could scour on the internet. So Brice Williams, he's got four children. So husband, dad, four kids. And if you look for him and his rankings in Ironmans and triathlons, you're going to find some pretty impressive results. He was 26th overall at Ironman Lake Tahoe. That was in 2015, I believe. 12th overall at Utah Half Ironman. And if you go back really far, he's first overall at the Bountiful Triathlon in 2013. You remember that one, Brice?
I don't.
They all blur together when he's been performing at such a high level. So, and I think you have a real job. So Brice, what is your actual job?
So I'm an ophthalmologist. I have a private practice, ophthalmology practice in Ogden, Utah.
So for those who don't know, myself included, what is ophthalmology?
That's eye surgery. So
Okay.
I do cataract surgery, LASIK surgery, different glaucoma, all kinds of stuff.
So in addition to all of his Ironman endeavors, he is an eye surgeon, ladies and gentlemen. And he's in Kona. He's in Hawaii right now. He's racing tomorrow in the Kona World Championships. So thank you, Brice, for coming on the show. Glad to have you.
Pleasure.
Tell us what got you into triathlon. We're just going to go back and we'll talk more about kind of what the premises of the show, but I want to just get into triathlon. What got you started?
Well, I've always had some athletic interest. I swam in high school and a little bit in college. And then I kind of took up motocross as a competitive outlet after college. And but then, once I got married and I had a little girl, and I injured my shoulder on motocross on a practice racing, I decided to hang up that sport. Kind of, it was too dangerous, and I was in the middle of medical school and such. And so my wife had competed in triathlons, and when we moved back from South Carolina to Utah, she and her father was also a triathlete. They encouraged me to sign up and try one, and I said, sure, we'll do one. And it was a lot of fun, and it seemed like something that would interest the whole family. So I picked up the bug from there, and then I kind of took it past what she originally wanted it to be. But that's how I got into it. Yeah.
So motocross, much faster bike, right, than the bike that you're on now. So what was that transition like for you? What was your first initial response to it?
Yeah, it's not quite that. Motocross has the adrenaline pumping and the big jumps, and I still missed that to this day. But the competitive side of triathlon it's actually more, since I can ride my bike or run or swim daily, it has a different advantage over motocross. Because motocross, it took a lot you have to drive to a track or drive to where you're going to ride, and then you only can usually do that once or twice a week, whereas triathlon training can be daily. And so I've come to more enjoy the training of triathlon more than I did the motocross.
Do you find that that's common, that athletes enjoy the training as much as the racing? I mean, that seems kind of rare to me.
I think it is a little bit more rare, especially in the people that maybe take it up for a period of time, because the races are so far and few between in triathlon. that if you have a few bad races, then you're kind of like, oh, this isn't fun. I do all this training and then I end up having a bad day. And so those individuals tend not to stay in the sport. Whereas, the people that enjoy the training, the race day is kind of the icing on the cake, but it's not the main course. It's kind of, it's fun to race, but you have to enjoy the process.
I always tell people that I love finishing. That's it. I love finishing a workout. I go to the gym so I can leave. Like, I just like being done. And so even in the training, it's kind of that same thing for me where I just like being done. And sometimes that's enough to get me started. But I'm not the guy that loves running, loves riding. And you and we met 2014. Was that when Maryland was?
I believe so.
Think we met 2014 Ironman Maryland. Might have been 15. I don't. No, it was 14. It was 2014. So we met at Ironman Maryland. You've been racing for a while. So tell us about one of your bad races. What's your very worst race memory?
Well, let me think. I'd have to think about that one for a second. It would, there was one this year that I didn't have a great race. It was just, I didn't perform nearly as well as all my training numbers were. My swim, I got dropped from the front group, and so I was swimming on my own. And then the bike actually went fairly well, but my run pace was so slow that I got passed by several people, and it was a frustrating day. But in the end, it was fine. You just when you have a bad day like that, you just say, you know what, my body that's what it had today. I still did my best, and you put it behind you and you just move on.
Yeah, we're gonna get into the mindset, but that does not count as a bad race, Brice. I mean, I remember for me St. George 2012, where basically I almost drowned and ended up getting a DNF and had to be pulled out by a boat. That's a bad race. So I don't have any empathy for you just not having a good swim or a good bike. How far have you come? So you've been training you've been competing for a long time. Walk us through kind of where you're at now, and then maybe where you were when you started, and just how far have you come? Because I think you're sponsored now. You've got a couple of sponsors you're working with. You're finishing, I mean, faster than some of the pros, right? So walk us through what that transition has been like.
Well, the first Ironman I did, I just wanted to finish, and it was a great race, and I met my goal. I finished. Between now and then, you each time you race, you kind of add another piece to the puzzle, and there's many pieces of this puzzle of an Ironman race. You have your how to pace, you have your nutrition problems, you have how to plan out your race, how to train appropriately, and all those different aspects have come in each time you race. So I believe that as you go through a training block, and you're talking like a 4-month or 5-month period of time where you train up to a race, each time I've done that, I've learned more and more about how to do the race properly. And before it was more of a how to finish an Ironman, and now it's how to race an Ironman, and it's totally different animal to race an Ironman like you would a 5K or a 10K versus I'm just going to slog this out and I just want to make it home.
Across the finish line.
Yeah.
I look back on my first race was Silverman in Nevada, which was a full distance. And I look back and I just think, number one, I was totally unprepared. But number two, I'm just so grateful that I actually finished, because I don't think that I would have stayed with it had I not finished. I think I would have been just really disappointed, and maybe I would have come back. I don't know. But what was your first Ironman race?
My first full distance race was Vineman. It was before it was an Ironman branded race, and that was, I think, 2013. And it was super fun. Everybody was so supportive, and really enjoyed the race. But yeah, it was more of a just kind of finishing it out. Try not to walk too
Make it
much.
across the finish line. Yeah, right. Try not to walk. Yeah, I think I've had one race where I've not really walked, but I did take off my shoes a couple times. Anyways, we're not talking about my races. Um, so, so talk to me about how triathlon has kind of spilled over into the rest of your life. You've got kids, you've got a wife, you've got a practice. What has triathlon's impact been on all of that?
Well, both good and bad, I think. Uh, like anything.
Sure.
Um, you know, the good parts are that it helps me focus. I'm more of an introverted type personality, and so while training might drain a lot of people's energy, it actually helps me to hit the reset button.
Hmm.
And so when I can go and just train on my own and be done, I'm ready to face a day where I'm seeing 40 people, 40 different patients every day, and that to me is more draining than doing a 2-hour bike session.
Interesting.
So yeah, so for me, and it helps me to be a better dad too. I have more patience with my kids and a better husband. So in that regard, I think the training helps me quite a bit. The bad part is that physically it does drain me, especially after my long days. And my long training days can be anywhere from 4 hours to 7 hours, and that can sometimes even be back to back. So a Friday I can go 6 hours, and then a Saturday I'll have two-hour sessions. So I'm going 10 hours in 2 days, and that drains me quite a bit. And so my energy levels on a Saturday afternoon might be less than what I'd wish. And also on a Sunday, I'd like to be a little more peppy for my kids and for my wife. But that's the trade-off, and you have to have that discussion with your family ahead of time before you just commit to train for a race. And you say, okay, there's going to be about 2 months, 2.5 months here where dad's going to be tired on Saturdays, and he's not going to want to play on the trampoline or something. So there's a sacrifice for that. And so that's kind of the bad part of Ironman, which you don't have, I think, in other sports. Running, you can run 80 miles in a week training for a marathon, and it only is going to take you 10 to 15 hours, in total. And you can get that done in the mornings, and you have the rest of your life to.
Let me just make a disclaimer there for all of our listeners who it will take way longer than 10 or 15 hours to do 80 miles a week. So just please don't try this at home. Consult with your physician or whoever before you take Brice's advice and say, next week I'm running 80 miles. It's only going to take me 10 hours, hon.
That's true. There's different paces out there. Sure.
So I remember, and I might misremember, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like I remember when we were in Maryland so many years ago. I remember we were all having a conversation. So for those who don't know, we were kind of all staying in this athlete house a little bit. And I remember my wife and your wife were, and you were talking about you kind of making a trade-off between more hours at your practice and more hours in training. Do I remember that right? Can you walk us through?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I just, since I have my own practice, I can have control of my schedule. And so when I'm training for an Ironman, I'll take a half day Friday, and actually in the future I'm going to take my full Friday off. And but yeah, I'd take a half day Friday to train in the morning, and then I'd work a little bit in the afternoon, and then on Saturday I had the day off. Otherwise, I would only train early in the morning, or I had a regular clinic schedule otherwise. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, and one of the things that I do, I work with executives, entrepreneurs, business owners, and so often they're giving up their health, their wellness for their career, for the money that they would make. And just the idea of you're voluntarily making less money so that you can spend more time doing this thing that I mean, let's be honest, you're probably losing money, right? Because all
Oh,
of the
for
time. And
sure.
so walk us
Yeah,
through why that's a trade-off that you're willing to make. What's the psychology behind it? How does your family feel about it?
yeah, sure. Well, I think physicians have a little bit of an advantage in that we live in poverty for so many years before we make any money. And so you kind of get used to not spending money on stuff, or at least living off of a very small income. And so right out of residency, you know, all of a sudden we jumped, up to the top tax bracket or whatever. But we didn't stop our habits of, shopping at Target or at Ross or for clothes, and the we didn't start living lavishly all of a sudden because we had debt, right? So you're making money, but you still have debt to
Mhm.
pay off, and so you're slowly transitioning into the idea of like, well, we have extra funds, and we actually are comfortable living off much less than what we make, and so to worry about, oh, I'm gonna, if I stop triathlon and I work an extra 10 hours a week, what is that going to equate to in the long run? Yeah, it's going to be a sizable amount of money, but I'm already living this low below my means. Like, why do I care about putting in a little extra away at this point? I think it's that we're happy living off a lot less than what we make
I
in
love
general.
that. I think that's such good advice. What would you say to the business owner, the entrepreneur maybe who is making some of those trade-offs for their health? Their health is kind of getting away from them in pursuit of, maybe building that career, building, more money, more wealth. What kind of advice would you have for them?
I would say the first thing to do is sit down and list your priorities, and and then ask yourself, am I am I living my life to meet those priorities, and making the changes that you need to make in order to meet those priorities. Some people's priorities is to make a lot of money, and that's fine, at the sacrifice of your health. But y- y- I've never talked to someone that's retired and so I see people who are in their 70s and 80s all day long, right? I see that's the age group of my patients, and so I get a lot of perspective from them. And I've never met anyone that said, "Oh, I wish I would have worked more," or "Man, I wish I would have just made a little more money." It's all like, "Man, I wish I would have spent a little more time with my family," or "I wish I would have taken better care of my health early on, because now every day I have to go see doctors." They're very frustrated with their health, but I also I have a few patients in particular that lived it right, and they have great health. They took charge of their situation early on, and yeah, they made less money most likely in the beginning, but it's not bothering them now.
That's,
You know.
I think that's powerful. I hope people take that away, because I know, when I work with somebody who's later on in life, I hear those same things. It's not, I wish I had grown my business more or made more money. It's, man, how do I now? In some cases, I'm helping them reconnect with their kids, reconnect with their spouses, because that's the trade-off. And maybe at the time they said, well, this is all for the family, but they were never around the family. They were always in the business trying to make more money. And now they're trying to get their health back. They're trying to get their families back. And it's a difficult place to be in. So talk to us about how your mentality has changed, or maybe it hasn't, just around, I mean, how has endurance sports changed your mentality or perspective of maybe what the human body can do, or physical limits, that kind of perspective?
Yeah, that is a big part of Ironman training, is training your brain to accept pain and not slow down. Uh, the body itself has a governor system on it, and your brain will most likely shut down your body before it actually gets to the point where it needs to shut down. And there's been plenty of studies that prove that. And so in training, I have pictures on my wall. And I'm not at home, but I could show you. But I have pictures on my wall that say, it's only in your head. Meaning the pain that you're experiencing or the suffering that you're experiencing is really only in your head. Your body can perform much more than what it's given you at this moment. And so mind over matter is actually kind of a true thing. And there are some exceptions to that out, and those people are usually the professional or the Olympians, because they have the ability to push past what the brain thinks it can do, and or what the body is telling it it can do, and the brain's just like, no, you got this. Just go for it.
What strategies do you employ to push beyond those physical limits?
Yeah, a lot of positive self-talk in the moment, living in the moment. So instead of thinking about the pain, I'll focus on my cadence, for example, and I'll start trying to distract my mind. The mind can only focus on one thing at a time. So, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, just repeating that over and over. And eventually you kind of forget about the pain or the suffering aspect, and you're like, okay, I'm back on track. And there's definitely a roller coaster type of emotion in a race, that you have to kind of get through the dips and also the highs. You have to kind of try and stay in the middle the whole time, and just accept the situation and adapt and try and move forward without getting down on yourself, with dark spots.
That wasn't the strategy that I was looking for, but that's okay, because I remember a video that I think your wife posted where you put cardboard boxes on the sides of your treadmill.
Yeah.
So that you couldn't get off either side.
I can't step off. I either die. Yeah, exactly. Keep going. I was getting in a bad habit of taking a little pause. And in my head after the workouts and stuff, I'm just like, that was stupid. Like, there's no reason for me to stop. I'm doing fine. I'm not. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to eliminate that temptation. And after a few weeks, I could get rid of those cardboard boxes, and I kept that good habit of just keep going. So it just took a little transition period where, develop a new habit.
I mean, habits is my wheelhouse. That's what I'm always working on with people. What drives you? Like, what pushes you? I mean, clearly you are someone who achieves at a high level in a lot of areas. So what is it that really pushes you and drives you?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. I just feel it's almost a expectation of myself. Like I need to do something. I'm going to get up and train today. It's not a question of, well, maybe I'll skip this one and get up tomorrow, sleep in, hit the snooze button and sleep in. I don't know. There's just something about, I think it's an inherent drive that I've developed over the years. I had an interesting job in college where I'd sell books door to door, a cold call. And that was tough, but it developed some habits of, just a what's the word? It's kind of a self expectation or a self, there's no possible, it's an expectation that I'm going to do it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, interesting, because you said you're an introvert and you're going door to door selling books.
Yeah.
So I can see how that would be.
I know, right? Yeah.
That would train the mind a little bit, right? For an introvert. How do you balance it all? You've got the practice, you've got your family, you've got young kids. How are you still a good surgeon, a good
Right.
husband, a good dad? How do you balance it all?
Well, I think efficiency is the key. Um, there's I plan things out ahead of time, and yeah, I never train with other. So one of the huge time suckers that can happen with Ironman training is if you try to meet up with other people to train with them. I say I do that like 4 times a year.
Hmm.
Uh, I never train with anyone else. I train in my own house, so I rarely ride my bike outside. Uh, I have a little endless pool in my house, or I go to a swimming pool, which is 5 minutes away, and then I treadmill run half the time, or I'll just run straight from my house. So efficiencies, you gotta plan for efficiency to get it all in. Or here's another example. My son had a birthday party, and uh, it was from like 2 to 4:30, so it was an hour and a half. And I was like, perfect. That's how long my run is. So I went there. I planned it. So I'm driving. I'm ready to run. Right. I even have like my headphones in. I have my heart rate monitor on. I'm ready to like jump out the door. And so we drop him off. I go inside. I say, hey, this is done in an hour and a half, right? She's like, yep, pick him up at 4 or whatever. And I'm like, great. And I walk outside. I start my Garmin and I'm running. And I already knew what route I was going to take. And I show back up and he's ready to walk out. And so that saved my wife from having to drive him there and back. So it was kind of a favor to her. I got my run in and he got to go to his birthday party. It was like, win-win.
Dude.
So those type of things.
Yeah, I mean, clicking on all cylinders, right? You're looking for solutions that are, win-win, multiple things at once. That's
Yeah.
awesome. How do you focus on your kids? So, certainly, and I know because I've trained for these events. I mean, it's tough when you've been gone all day long and you've been outside all day long for maybe a long run or a long ride, and then you come home and they want to go outside or they want to go run around or jump on the trampoline. What kinds of things do you do to maybe keep that balance with the kids so they're not saying, Dad, do you love triathlon more than me? Kind of a thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, periodization is something that I believe in, and that's where there's going to be periods when you are sacrificing some of your family time for triathlon. But then there's other times when you're down, when your body needs to recover, and that's when it's family time and focus time. So, for example, after this race, we're flying over to Maui and spend a week there, and I'm not even gonna think about running or biking or swimming. In fact, I'm not gonna think about that for probably a month. Uh, I may get up and do something for fun, but it's definitely family focused time. We've planned a trip. We do our lagoon trip after Kona, which is an amusement park in Utah. So the kids look forward to that in late October. So that's after Kona, and that's been planned. We plan a Thanksgiving trip after, so that family focus can come a little bit after I'm done with my part. And then the other thing that I've come to feel is that the kid playtime and activity time and stuff with the kids is part of my training. In that, if part of an Ironman is late in the game, you're tired, but yet you have to ask more of your body. And the same thing can kind of apply to the kids and stuff. So I have my big long training day, and then I say, you know what, my training is not done. Now I'm just changing sports, and I'm going to play with my kids. And so it's an extension a little bit in my head
Yeah.
of training, and so yeah, let's go play on the trampoline. This will be my strength training, or whatever.
Push your mind to play. You probably have less My Little Ponies than I have, but you have more Transformers. But for me, it's like, okay, I can be the little ponies and I can run around. So love
It's
that.
cute. Love them.
What are your goals for Kona? This is tomorrow.
Well,
Like, what are you
yeah,
feeling? How are you
tomorrow.
feeling? What's the plan?
So I'm feeling really good. I'm healthy. It's one of the only races I've showed up to being able to train without injury affecting it.
It's
Um,
great.
yeah, and so that's been great. Tomorrow, my goals are going to be focused a lot on things I can control. You know, my attitude, my effort, my heart rate, my nutrition. Those sorts of things. And I don't even want to know where I am in the overall standings until the last half of the run, or even the last third of the run, and that's when things can really shake up, especially here in Hawaii, where if Maryland was a great race, but it wasn't so taxing that you could make some mistakes and still do okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here, if you make mistakes early on, they will show up in the middle of the run or the late end of the run. And so, uh, at that stage, if I'm still feeling good, then yeah, I do. Even if I don't feel good, I want to know where I'm at. And one of my goals is to really perform on that last 10 miles or so of the marathon. So my coach is going to be out there, and he's going to tell me where I'm at about halfway through the run, and at that point, the hope is I can run my way up. In the I don't know where I'll end up. That's not really controllable, but if I can just have my best miles at the end of the marathon.
Dude, that is incredible. I'm super excited for you. I think,
Thanks.
man, I mean, you're lightning fast anyway, so I'm excited to see how you stack up. And this is your second time doing Kona, right?
Right. Yeah. And the first time I didn't race. You know how I was talking about the difference between uh, doing an Ironman and racing an Ironman. When I was
Mm-hmm.
here last time, I was not racing. I was doing it. And tomorrow I plan to race it.
You're racing. You're racing.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, the podcast is the Greer Method, and so my business is Greer Method Complete Coaching, and my methodology, the Greer Method, is all about three things. The first thing is achieving consistency. The second thing is building technique, and the third thing is managing intensity. Of course, all of those have a place in Ironman and certainly in life. So let's just kind of walk through those and just talk from your perspective. What are some of the habits, and it doesn't just have to be triathlon, but just life in general or triathlon. What are some of the habits that you feel you should be or need to be consistent in?
Well, good question. So, in Ironman, consistent, and this I guess applies to life too, is if you're consistently doing what you need to do to achieve your goals, the process ends up taking care of itself. And people who like want to race an Ironman, they need years of training before the body's ready for something like that. And going out and having a big day once a week is not going to make it. Let's say you have 10 hours a week to train, and you can choose to put 5 of those hours on one day and then 1 hour the rest of the days and take one day off, is less effective than doing 2 hours 5 days a week. So consistent everyday training is going to be a lot more effective than having these binge and purge sort of pattern. Yeah. And I think the same goes, with life in general. To be a good ophthalmologist, it'd be better for me to do 5 cataract surgeries a week than every week than 25 once on one day a month. I'll lose a lot of skills, or my comfort level with the surgeries would be much better if I'm doing a little bit more frequently.
Love that. And so the base of the habits that kind of lays the foundation, right? We're consistent with our habits, especially in triathlon, the habit of, going and doing the training, the habit of eating right, the habit of, just putting in the work. Um, Talk to us about where the technique comes in, especially you're at a level where that's where you make gains at this point, right? I mean, technique and still improving your fitness, but, how important is having the proper technique, in what you do in both your, surgery as well as in Ironman?
Yeah, sure. Well, technique or form, running or swimming, and even biking with proper form will not only make you more efficient, so that means you can achieve a higher speed with less effort, but it also is crucial with injury prevention. And if you and same with ophthalmology, if you sit properly underneath the microscope, you're going to prevent back injuries, and you'll be more consistent in your approach to the way you operate. And so I work on my technique often, almost in every day. You think about, like, am I using the proper running form, and all of my strength training is focused on maintaining proper form. So, like, a good strong core will not only help my swim, but my run. It'll help me prevent injury.
I immediately just tried to sit up more in my chair. I was like, oh yeah, core. I need that as well. I'm wearing my Ironman Maryland shirt.
I love it. Yeah, I still have mine
in
too.
honor. I had to go dig it out, but and then what about managing intensity? So I love the 5 hours of training versus the 2 hours of training on 5 days. Like that's obviously better. How do you manage that intensity with too much intensity pushing into injury or burnout, and too little of intensity leading to maybe complacency or mediocrity? How do you think about managing that intensity?
So first you have to pick what metric you're going to use to measure your intensity. In athletics, there's different methods. One is the RPE, or relative perceived exertion, which is a very subjective way of doing it, but it works great for more advanced athletes. So the professionals will often measure their intensity by their perceived exertion, just because they have so much experience that they have an accurate feel of, my body can take this, right, for this long. I'm not being that experienced myself. I have to use heart rate as a metric to monitor my intensity. And over the years, and through testing, I've developed, and my coach has helped me with this, different heart rate zones for different intensities. So you have your very low, and different people define these zones differently. Some people have zone 1 to 5, and the coaching group that I use has 4 zones. There's the ZR, zone recovery, which is way easy, and then there's a gap of intensity where we don't really hang out in that area. And then we have zone 1, which zone 1 is aerobic effort. And then zone 2 is just above threshold, or right around threshold effort. And then we have zone 3, which is way above threshold. It's an effort that you can only hold for a short amount of time. So we have those three zones that we operate in, and then we have this recovery zone that is like, barely walking sort of effort sort of thing. So 80% of my time training is spent in zone 1, is aerobic, and then 20% is above that. However you want to split it up. Zone 2 or zone 3. So depending on how much intensity I want to have that particular week. But we're very injury if you do too much at a high intensity, that's when injury is going to hit.
Yep.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's why that's a part of, what I work with people on, is because people oftentimes, when they haven't spent the time developing the consistency of habits or the proper technique, they're like, well, I'm just going to go out and do all of it at once. And then they spend, they push themselves to injury or a burnout, and they're burning the candles at both ends. And it doesn't work out. Even when we met back in Maryland, you were working with a coaching group at the time. Give us maybe some highlights of what coaching has done for you, and maybe even a shout out to like who have been really meaningful coaches for you. Not necessarily people that you pay, but just people who have been good coaches to you.
Sure. Yeah. Well, my athletic coach has been crucial. Is worth every penny. Just because he has a bigger picture, he has a better perspective, and I get caught up in, well, I want to do well on this race, and his focus is more of, well, I want to develop you as a better person and a better athlete, and this race is important to you, but I see hundreds of races in the future, and so let's not sacrifice things that are more important for something that you see. So he sees the forest for the trees, and I'm more focused on, oh crap, I had a bad workout. So that's been great. And with the experience that he's a professional triathlete, and he brings a lot of experience to the table, and so I can bounce ideas off him whenever I need to. Other life coaches, my father-in-law has been and I love him to death, but he set the bar so high that my wife looks at me and is like, why aren't you more like my dad? So he's been a great coach, and just in giving me an example of like, okay, this is, he's an amazing man, and loves his family so much, and the things that he did and does is an example to me. So he's a coach for sure to me.
Love that.
Yeah. I've had other mentors and things in the professional arena that have done things meaningful to me too. Yeah.
Well, I love that you are, even though you are somebody who is driven, who is always planning and prioritizing and thinking of goals, and you still are surrounding yourself with people who are going to push you, people who are going to, encourage you and motivate you to take it up a notch, regardless of whether or not you really need much of that. It's there, and it's moving that little bit more. So totally love that. So goals tomorrow, do you have a goal time tomorrow? Is it, not, and don't talk about it if you don't need to, if I don't want to mess with your mind the night before your race.
I mean, it's so hard because it's such a variable conditions race. Like today, the winds are fairly calm, and so if I was it doesn't seem super hot, but if I was racing today, I could probably be in the low 9s, right? I've gone 8:42 as my PR in Texas, and that was a really fast course. This course is much more challenging. But I could see, on a really mild day, I could break 9 hours here, I think. But tomorrow it could be windy and it could be 10 degrees hotter. So, and then my time could be like in the 940s. I do feel like I'll be under 930 no matter what. But how far under that depends a little bit on, my day and the conditions.
Yeah. How does training for Kona differ from training for the other races here in the States?
I focused more, so there is not a flat piece of land out here, and so I was always doing hills, I run. My long runs were always like at 1:00 in the afternoon on the hottest day I could find, on hills, and my bike sessions were all inside. And the way we train for heat inside is I get on a program called Zwift. I don't know if you've heard of
Oh yeah.
Zwift. Yeah. So I'll get on Zwift. So then I have the variable resistance. So it mimics hills. And I wear a sweatshirt and I put a light fan on my legs just so that I don't sweat through my socks too much. Because otherwise I'll get so much sweat going down my legs that it makes my feet really sloshy. It's kind of gross. So at least the sweatshirt will absorb all the sweat and the fan will blow off the sweat that gets past that. And I change my sweatshirt out every hour because every hour I've already soaked through a sweatshirt. And I keep my room in the mid 70s. So both temperature and humidity. And that's what I'll train in for every single session, running. And if I can't run outside in the heat, I'll run in my treadmill in the heat. So
This is I mean, I'm like shocked right now. I mean, I've seen the videos of the cardboard boxes. I've seen the videos of your kid, you know, jumping on you while you're in your endless pool. Like I've seen all that, but I'm blown away right now. I'm blown away. And what it really makes me think of is I always believe that the amount of voluntary suffering that we put ourselves through makes involuntary suffering happen much less, because you put yourself through such rigor that, I mean, how does one come into Brice's life and make it a bad day? I just don't. Unless they're like wrapping you up in blankets and beating you with a bat, I feel like you're going to be like, hey, this isn't that bad.
Probably some truth to that, yeah. That's funny.
Wow. Well, Brice, you are the man. I'm excited to see how you do tomorrow. I'm so grateful that you just made yourself available for everybody who's listening. I mean, I literally sent him a message yesterday saying, hey, can we chat? And he was like, yeah, let's do it. So just thank you for being accessible and available and just being a great guy. You inspire me as an athlete. I hope that you'll inspire many, many others who will listen to this or watch this on the replay. If you have questions for Brice or myself, then put them in the comments. Definitely, post them there. But thank you for your example as an athlete, as a professional, as a husband, and as a dad. I think that you give people some good things to think about as we kind of retool our own approach to life. So thank you. Anybody you want to thank or give a shout out to, or anything you want to say before I let you go back to the mental game of preparing?
Well, sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for setting this up, and right back at you. There's some things that have happened in your life that I don't know that I could have dealt with, to be honest.
I appreciate
So you're an example to me too. And of course, my coach Doug McLean with QT2 Systems, and then my sponsors are Zone 3. They have great swim products, and Fusion makes my race kit, and they have great athletic wear. And then my wife is the biggest one. She has taken a big back seat to some of my endeavors, and that's a temporary thing, and I think we're going to move into a transition where I'm more focused on magnifying her over the next little bit, and I may not end up doing another Ironman for a year or two. We'll see.
We will see.
We will see. I've said that before, and she's been so sweet but anyway, so she and the kids, they're so family. I love them so much. I wouldn't be able to do this without their support.
Good. Well, thank you. What a good example of somebody who puts the work in and gets the results. And you guys can't see because he's only showing from his neck up, but dude, this guy is in legit shape. So watch him on Kona. We're going to see him come through. Thank you, Brice, so much. And definitely let us know how it goes. And we'll catch you next time.
Okay, buddy. Appreciate
Thanks, Brice. See ya. Bye.